Scott, could you talk to us about leadership?
Yeah, leadership has lots of definitions, or at least lots of perceptions, lots of value scales associated with leadership. And in a good place organization, based on scripture, there's a whole different concept. A lot of people will say that leadership ultimately derives from God's authority over the universe, which everything does ultimately derive from God. If you have that kind of faith, I do. So saying that leadership ultimately comes from God is next to meaningless, because everything does. In what ways does leadership come from God or reflect who God is, or reflect who we are supposed to be to each other? And I think that's the key thing in an organization filled with humans. Yes, our relationship with God is important. Our relationship with each other is really what leadership is about. I like to say that every human has the same value, 1. There's no human that has a value of 1.1. There's no human that has a value of 0.9. There's certainly no human that has a value of 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, while other people have lesser values. Everyone has the exact same value. So that's an important concept to get across. If you go out to mow your yard all by yourself, I don't know if there's any leadership involved, because you're just doing the work. You don't need yourself to tell yourself how to go mow your yard. When there's 2 people involved, somebody will have a personality where their way prevails. Is that leadership? I don't think so necessarily. If 5 people are working together, somebody needs to coordinate the work of 5 different people, most likely. So that's the role of leadership. The role of leadership is to coordinate the work of people who are working together. Does that make you a more valuable person? I say no, it doesn't. Your value is still 1. The more people you have, you'll have layers of decision making. We can call that leadership. There's layers of decision making. You can't, if you have an organization, my definition of an organization is a group of people working together for a common purpose. So anyone who's working in the organization is working for the same purpose. There's a well-known apocryphal story about John F. Kennedy walking through the NASA center when they were on their process to go to the moon, and he asked the guy sweeping the floor, "What do you do here?" He said, "Mr. President, I'm here to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade." So everyone in that building was working for that purpose. They had different roles. Could you have built that rocket without somebody keeping the area clean? No. They had to have very high level of cleanliness for those components for that rocket, or it could fail. So I like to say you could have $1 million Ferrari, but if you took out 2 of the spark plugs, assuming it was an electric car, internal combustion, took out 2 of the spark plugs, which I have no idea how much spark plugs for Ferraris cost, but you go down to the parts store, they're not even $2 each. You take out 2 spark plugs, that $1 million car is worthless. What's the value of those spark plugs now? The V12 engine, you'd pay a lot for that. You'd pay a lot for the carbon fiber monocoque chassis, but each component is meaningless without all the others. Take one wheel off and go have a race. You couldn't get out of the pit. So everyone is necessary in the organization. You need some people who, 5 people have an opinion, and just to be effective and efficient at some level, somebody has to say, good ideas, here's what we're going to end up doing. Somebody in that role can feel like they're doing more important work than everybody else. Other people might feel like that person's doing more important work than anybody else. but it's no less important than anyone else in the organization.
So Scott, I have some questions. Can I jump in now? Or?
Sure.
Okay. So can this role be rotational? In other words, if this is, it's about making the organization happen, in theory, can you switch out this person every 2 years with someone else and get everyone to kind of know what it feels like to be on that spot?
See, now you're sounding like the scene of the furs cutters in Holy Grail, where they tell King Arthur that they have a narco-syndicalist commune where they take in turns to act as a sort of executive officer for the week.
The Dread
maybe
Pirate Roberts, yeah.
the Dread Pirate Roberts too. Maybe, multiple people could be the Dread Pirate Roberts. Yeah, maybe there is some efficiency in getting good at what you do, and not switching people out, too often. I like how you phrase the question, to make the organization happen. So I want to focus on that word happen. What does it mean for the organization to happen? What is the organization supposed to do? And there's another assumption that people make. The organization is supposed to be ultimately efficient. It's supposed to be able to attract capital. It's supposed to return profit on investment for the investors. That's what it's for. And all those things, while they're ancillary to what an organization might need to do, it's not the core. And this is where we get confused ideas about what leadership is. The core purpose of an organization is to facilitate people's labor so that their labor is a tool of grace that God uses in their lives to form them into who God wants them to be. That's the purpose of labor, and that's the purpose of an organization, to facilitate that process. Along the way, lots of other things happen, but that's the core reason labor was created.
So leadership kind of finds its place in the idea of systems here, where it gets kind of spelled out as to how it happens and what's going on in this position.
So systems are involved in the process, but let's not take our eyes off the purpose of the process. The purpose of the process is for people to grow and develop and become more and more like the resurrected Christ, and to live lives that bring shalom, the kingdom of heaven, to the areas where we live. That's the purpose of work. And when you're in a role where multiple people are working together and you make the call on what the decision is, just because you can't have direct democracy over and over and over in every decision in life, you can call that leadership. That's what the role is. It's to help facilitate that kind of work happening. Okay. Go ahead.
All right, so there is this notion, though, I think it's a modern one, but it has sort of a intuitive, kind of makes sense idea to it, in that, well, here's someone that's very charismatic, here's someone that's very confident, here's someone that's very articulate, here's someone that when they walk into the room there's a magnetism around them, here's a person that can actually be the face of the organization as it interacts with the public in a marketing and promotion. And many people look to that and say, well, here's our leader, or they might say, well, this person is the founder, and as it started in the garage, proverbial garage, so to speak, this person's drive and intelligence and vision, etc., has brought us to this point. So historically, here's our leader. Or charismatically, the effectiveness of this person. This is the one we want out there to be our public face. And these things kind of get melded together with, and the idea is, well, that's what you need a leader to be. And, well, what do you say to that?
How long do we have here?
As long as you feel you can give a decent answer or a good answer.
There's so many assumptions in the question that you asked. So I can't just answer the question directly without addressing the assumptions of what people have when they go, this charismatic, clever person who always seems to pick the right thing to do, we want them in charge of us. What is the concept of what we are supposed to be? What is the concept of the purpose of us getting together? supposed to be. Because a lot of, especially you use self-confident, which consciously or subconsciously, a lot of people seem to love people who are self-confident. Maybe because we lack confidence, and when we hang around them, we can feel confident about things. But I don't think that dynamic is a healthy one. I think in leadership, you're looking for people who are humble. How self-confident are humble people? They might be confident in things, but I don't know if they would come across as being confident in themselves. The phrase that I think is very significant related to leadership is a role for serving others. And charismatic, self-confident people, some of them are all about serving others. I don't know that that's common for self-confident, charismatic people to be all about serving others. And what face does the organization need to have? The real face of the organization is the people who provide the services to the people who receive the services or products. That's the real face of the organization. And in a well-run organization, somebody in leadership will be hustling to keep up with the excellent work that the people who are providing that product and service do. So, when God gave in to Israel's desire to have a king, and Samuel was going out to find the person God wanted to be king, he was dazzled by the tall, handsome, good-looking, strong-looking person. And God says, you're looking at the wrong thing. I'm looking at people's hearts. And in leadership, if you don't have a heart that puts other people first, and you don't see your primary role being to serve others, you shouldn't have that role where you're making decisions that affect other people, because you should be making the decisions in the best interest of those people who those decisions impact. Namely, the people who said, I will give you my labor and you can direct me.
Okay. So, and we have certain community units in our society, the family, our friend group, let's say, more or less volunteer organizations like the church you go to. And there can be people like, leading that, the head of household leading the family, if you will.
So there's a very useful distinction to make between formal and informal leadership.
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
So a lot of people have informal leadership, and you can even say informal authority with the people that they know and love based on their character and your history of living with them. In an organization, people get a formal role of authority to make decisions, and that's totally different. You can, you can be somebody who does not have a strong, charismatic personality that people are drawn to, and be an excellent formal leader in putting people's interests first. You also need to be able to communicate that well. You can be brilliant, but if you can't communicate the reasons why you make these decisions so people buy into them, that's a problem.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott.